Okay, it's another little work in progress tutorial here of the Sculptor. I still don't have an exact title for this sculpture, but it's going to look something like this sketch. For some reason I'm able to sculpt things better than I can sketch them, but anyhow, that gives you a concept. Alright. Now, let me zoom out here and show you what I'm doing. Okay. I am working on several things. Let me show you what I've done with my armature. I have bulked it out, as you can see, with regular Super Sculpey. And again, I decided to go with Super Sculpey instead of the white Sculpey. I just wanted to have more confidence in how strong it was going to be, and I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in the regular Sculpey, so I went with Super Sculpey. And this guy's going to have a little bit of a pot belly, so and again, what I'm doing is I'm trying to retain a little bit of posability for the final covering of clay with the clothing colored clays, and in the meantime kind of bulking out the body so that I can just overlay and drape the fabric layer. But that's where I've gotten. Now that has been baked, and then what I've done is I'm going to be cutting off the end of this, but for the time being I used regular 5-minute epoxy to glue a nail here in the seat, and I'm going to bulk that out with the 2-part sculpting epoxy in just a little while here. And then what I've done is I have glued in, I don't know whether you can see it there, a little piece of brass tubing, little tiny piece, that this nail will fit into once it's cut off. I could put that down in there, and again, this is going to be trimmed off to about here so that when he sits down it'll be firmly planted in there. Okay, to kind of recap a little bit, what I've done is I've finished the main head, and when that's baked, then I'll apply the hair and facial hair and the features. And the idea is for that head to look like the subject that this character is sculpting, which is going to be this guy. And I've mounted that on a sculpture stand of sorts that I've made from craft wood, and painted and glazed it, and then made sort of a bust out of this. Okay, I've done a little bit of fill-in work on the legs of my little figure, covered them completely with clay, and worked on getting the pose about the way I want for the lower legs. It's still just sitting on this stool with the help of, I don't want to remove that just now, but anyway, the nail and the little brass fitting that's in the stool to make them easily, put together easier. I have created the form for the hands with the guidance of a tutorial from a gal named Renata Jansen, who is in the UK. But she suggests starting with some thin wire and then building it up with first glue and then liquid polymer clay. So that's what I'm getting ready to do. I've taken, I did one little variation. I used floral wire instead of bare wire because it's a little easier to handle when it comes to covering with clay. So I used that to actually form the fingers. That can be gotten at most any hobby supply store, as well as online. And these fingers are going to look inordinately long because, remember, the palm of the hand is going to take up quite a bit of that space. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy to kind of fill in the palms of the hands and make kind of a base to put the polymer clay on. Alrighty, my glue is dry. The epoxy that I had put on the hands, and now I'm going to apply some TLS. And again, when I'm doing this, you probably can't see with the camera, but there's a little bit of white, and that shows me that I have too much on that spot. What you want to do is just have enough to make it look wet, but not see the white, because if it's thick enough that you can see the white, it's going to ooze all over the place and make a bit of a sloppy mess. Now that might work just fine if you were not going to do a lot of modeling or a lot of work on that area. If you're just going to lay some clay over it, it may be fine, but in this case I'm going to be doing some modeling on top of that, so the clay would just slide right off and end up getting a lot more mushy. I'm going to put lots of TLS on that wire, the armature wire that's underneath there, because that area is going to be pretty critical. Let me get this nice and pliable and very easy to work with. Again, this flesh colored clay that I'm working with is a combination of Super Sculpey and Cernit with just a tiny bit of coloration, because I thought it lacked a little bit of the pinkness that I was looking for. I made myself a little handle to work on the hand with by stringing the wires down through a little piece of brass tubing, so that's what you see here. Just makes it easier to hold on to while I'm working on it. So this will be his right hand, which will be grasping a tool. Okay, what I've done here is I've had to back away from just the wire-only hands. It just wasn't strong enough. And I went back to my first instinct, which was to use the telescoping sizes of brass tubing, in this case hex tubing. So these are the same hands as in the earlier segment. I took the wire on the ends, bunched it up, and put it inside of a smaller piece of brass tubing, and then put the epoxy sculpt over that to fix that on there so it had a good bond. And then did the same thing on this side, but I put the larger hex tubing after cutting off a bit of the arm. I epoxy puttied, epoxy sculpt the larger tube onto the end of the arm. So now what there is to do is, after all of that moving around, I'll have to do some repair on the hands. and then start filling in the lower arms with clay.